Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today I've got a build guide for my Caustic Arrow Raider I built in Trial of the Ancestors League. Now, this character was built for a specific purpose, and that was to run heists. It's a very fast and speedy character. So now that I'm out of the heist area, you can see my actual speed when I'm running around, and this syndicate member doesn't have haste. That was a further buff that I could have, and I have a withering step that'll give me elusive that increases speed even longer. But then the build uses Caustic Arrow, and I have an Arrow Nova attached to it that allows it to launch up and split into 6 directions with an additional arrow on my bow. But I'm also using a Vaal Caustic Arrow, so there is an extra effect that I will get to show off when I'm running the heist. I also have Toxic Rain Totems. These are useful for additional single target damage, but not the primary thing I built the build around. So let's go into the heist, and I can loot stuff if I want. But the goal for this character was to just literally run in and complete the contracts because I want to get reveals for blueprints by running with Gianna through these blueprints. Only had to open 2 doors on the way down, grab the thing, and I can just like super sprint my way all the way back out. This is like what I was doing with this character all the way up to level 96. It was just speed running heists, though I was probably hitting the reward chests and things along the way. So I was killing more, and I can kill everything in here. The character is built to survive everything that can show up in here. No worries at all. And then I can just blast right into the next one, but this one I'm going to go a little slower where you can look at what the build is actually doing. I can launch stuff everywhere. This is 83 records office. Here's a magic pack of enemies, a rare enemy, Curse It, Withering Step. It's not going to super get the job done against a single target. Well, especially an Innocence Touched one. That's a super rare one. But I killed that only with the Caustic Arrow, Curse, and Withering Step. Or single target scenarios like that, I have the Toxic Rain Totems, which will do their thing. They will add a little bit to it, but they're not going to do the big, heavy work. That is what the Vaal Caustic Arrow is for. I launch that up. It launches in 6 directions, lingers for quite a while. It does way more damage than my Caustic Arrow does. 3 times the damage, and it's still there. So that is the big reason for running Arrow Nova with the Caustic Arrow, is to really increase the area that you can hit with the Vaal Caustic Arrow. Alright, let's actually let it get a little bit more dangerous in this one on the way out. I actually have to fight something. Yeah, some rare enemies. Okay, then we'll Vaal Caustic Arrow, Curse, Withering Step, and that's what will happen to most rare enemies. They will get obliterated, and the Vaal Caustic Arrow does so much damage in comparison to the Caustic Arrow. It's a big deal. There's a security specialist. He just kind of died in the middle of all of that, taking out the rare enemies. There's a head enforcer. We'll let him have the Vaal Caustic Arrow, super degen him. But all at the same time, I have 91% chance to evade with no flasks up, 94 with flasks up, so chances of me getting hit is very low from these guys. Before even thinking about Withering Step and the elusive that it brings, damage is really good, spell suppressions is completely topped up, and I did hit level 100 on this character, so I eventually dropped some survivability for more damage, so it could have way better life, but I leveled it to 100. One of the great parts about being a raider, in heists especially, is these doors just packed with enemies. You can just run through them, and even on top of that, being really evasive. If they do get their attacks off, most of the time you're not going to get hit by most or any of them. Now, because I was showing it off in heist, that does not mean that this build cannot do maps. I built around the Queen of the Forest to maximize speed specifically for heists, but this build does wonders in maps as well. Very good for just speed clearing maps. Like, I want to run once through the map, hit like everything along the way. Really good for boss rushing, just churning through maps, farming for your Maven invitations or Guardian bosses. whatnot. And I can kill everything along the way because I have so much coverage with the Caustic Arrow. Something gets tough, drop totems, curse, withering step, and I have 2 uses of my Vaal Caustic Arrow ready if anything crazy happens. But then for the boss, Vaal Caustic Arrow, curse, withering step, drop my totems. Sure, the boss will die. And if the first Vaal Caustic Arrow runs out, I have another one, but it lasts 9.7 seconds. So chances of that are going to be pretty low. It won't take you 20 seconds to kill a map boss, like ever. This build is really simple to get up and running. There's a lot of very reliable ways to get a +3 bow. It's a little more difficult to get a level 21/20 Vaal Caustic Arrow like I have, because you have to double corrupt Caustic Arrows to get a 21 and a Vaal version of the gem. And what we've seen so far from the Affliction reveal, I've seen 1 transfigured gem for Caustic Arrow. It gives it 40% chance to poison on hit, so not really geared with what I am currently doing with the Caustic Arrow build, so I don't think that'll really change anything. But let's go over the gems in gear. So in my bow is where I have my Caustic Arrow. This is where you want your gem link to get the most damage out of it, because you can get +3 to the level of bow gems on it. So I get 3 levels from having this in here. Now I don't have an Empower. I wasn't able to get one to level 4, so I'm using a damage on full life. This is the last gem in here. Empower is probably better if you can get a level 4 one, otherwise they're about the same. But I have an Awakened Void Manipulation that's giving me +1 Chaos Gems for the Caustic Arrow. Swift Affliction, Arrow Nova. Awakened Arrow Nova can give you an additional projectile. I happen to get an additional projectile on my bow when I crafted it, but I did not get an Awakened Arrow Nova in SSF this league. And then I also have an Awakened Vicious Projectiles. All of these are for stacking damage, except for the Arrow Nova, allowing me to, instead of firing 1 of these, fire 6 of them at once and get crazy coverage. So with just like 1 little step, I can cover whole screen wide area of Caustic Ground to do my damage. Now, it used to be a little better to play Caustic Arrow kind of as a single target setup. Now, when you do that with the Vaal Caustic Arrow, it's only going to shoot out 1 line of its degen, about where all those footsteps were, and it'll only damage in that area. It's when you get the Arrow Nova support in it that it'll fire the same way that my Caustic Arrow does. It'll fire up when it hits the ground. It's going to launch those damaging areas in 6 directions, so you get a lot of coverage out of it. Can deal with a lot more than just 1 tough monster when you use the Arrow Nova. In the chest, I have the Toxic Rains, linked with Ballista Totem, multiple totems, efficacy, void manipulation, and vicious projectiles. So it's to get the most duration out of the Toxic Rain debuffs, get as much damage out as I can with totems. I can put 5 of them down. I didn't spec into any totem things on the tree. It's just something else that can like take damage before anything would get to me, and extra damage on the target as I'm hitting the target with a big withering step and casting despair on it. The Toxic Rain totems benefit from that as well. In my gloves, I have a Clarity, Malevolence, Grace, and my Despair Curse, which I'm casting myself. It's the only curse I'm using on enemies, so just cast it myself. Any other way lowers the effectiveness of it, and if I were to get a Despair on hit, it wouldn't be leveled, so I get better scaling out of my Despair by casting it myself. In my helmet, I have Steel Skin, Enduring Cry, Anomalous Withering Step, which the quality from Anomalous Withering Step is now the basic quality on Withering Step in Affliction League. So this will be identical. This is just Withering Step, essentially, now 3 days from this video. So the Enhance would work on it the same way, giving me extra Wither inflicts from my Withering Step. So by getting the quality up to at least 30, I get +3. So with my Withering Step, I'm applying 10 Wither debuffs. And the Withered lasts 6.6 seconds. Unlike a lot of other sources of Withering Step gives you a really long duration on it, so it can stack up really easily. Even if I get cooldown off on the Withering Step, I can apply it again, make sure they're at the maximum 15 Wither stacks easily just with this Withering Step. Steel Skin is a really nice buff for the evasion build. It can remove bleeding, and that's like, I'm not going to get hit often. 2,209 extra flat HP that I can take damage from whenever it shows up is really nice. And I'm spending a lot of time on this build running around. I have a mirror arrow for movement, but I mostly am just run, cast, spray caustic round everywhere, withering step, curse when needed, and then toxic rain. Vaal caustic arrow for a single target. So the last gems I have in here are faster attacks linked with blink arrow, and then a cast on death portal to use if I'm running maps with this and I die. I'll just pop right back in, even though I can run across the map really fast, especially when the flask's up and the elusive I can run. So for the gear here, I was talking about a bow. Now it is really easy to get +2 level of socketed bow gems on a bow, and it's also really easy to get a 6-link that you can craft on. The Porcupine Divination card gives you a 6-link short bow. You turn that in, there you go, there's the 6-link. You can use a Shrieking Essence of Dread. This guarantees +2 level of socketed bow gems on your weapon. Then you go to the crafting bench. As long as there is an open prefix, you can craft cannot roll attack modifiers. This costs a divine orb. Then you spend an exalt on this. The only thing it can roll is +2 level of socketed bow gems. There's a +3 bow, and then you go back to the crafting bench and use the Veiled Craft for chaos damage over time multiplier. And there you go. There's a bow for this build. I happen to get a little bit luckier with the additional arrow and a little bit of extra damage over time multiplier on mine, but it's really that easy. As long as you have the crafts from the unique map to get the cannot roll attack mods and the Veiled Craft for the chaos dot, the Shrieking Essence of Dread, you can make a bow for this build very easily. For my chest, I'm using Queen of the Forest Destiny Leather. This has life, it has some all res, higher cold res than the other two, but the big thing about this chest is it gives you increased movement speed per 600 evasion rating up to 75%. So that means that you will cap it out if you have 40,000 evasion rating. 75 times 600 is 45,000 evasion rating. So I'm a little under passively, but with my flask up, I am capped on the movement speed it can give me because I need 45,000 evasion rating to make that work to its fullest effect. So that's how the character is kind of built. I've got big evasion rating on my gloves and my boots. Evasion rating from the Devoto's Devotion. This is giving extra movement speed, some chaos resistance, some extra attack speed. I'm getting extra movement speed from implicit on my boots and the enchant from lab. I guess they're probably doing away with boots enchants as well in Affliction League. On my gloves, just have damage, spell suppression, extra damage. My belt has life, fire, and lightning res. Jewel has cooldown recovery rate, life, nothing crazy there. It's hard to get good abyss jewels for dot builds. And my rings are both amethyst rings with life, fire, and cold res. One of them with a little bit of all res. Both of them have mana as well, and minus mana cost of skills, so that I can actually cast this, and I'm still degenning my mana even with a level 18 clarity is where it's currently at. I could probably level it up more given I have so much mana on my gear, but it regens quickly enough. I don't need to spam my main caustic arrow down that often, and nothing else is really going to drain it, my mana, like the caustic arrow does. My amulet has +1 all chaos skill gems, giving another +1 level to the caustic arrow. When I was leveling to 100, I was using this amulet instead that had life on it with extra evasion and resistances, getting Disciple of the Unyielding, which on the passive tree down here gives you endurance charges on kill. But my current amulet for damage is allocating corruption, giving increased effect of withered. This quiver I crafted with an essence myself. The essences of woe, when used on a quiver, give increased damage with bow skills. Now every other thing with this essence is spell damage or energy shield, so especially if you're playing a solo self-found, you really can't get much out of these essences while you're playing on a bow build. You're not going to be building around energy shield most of the time. So with this build in particular, you can use these, and I'm using a penetrating arrow quiver because when you use caustic arrow, if it hits an enemy, it will put the caustic ground at that location, but then it will pierce to the next enemy, and if it then makes it to its end duration, it will have put a puddle down around the area it pierced, and then at the end duration. So pierce is good for this build. Not mandatory, but it definitely helps. So I use the penetrating arrow quiver, and I use these essences on here until I get something good. Now, on mine, I crafted it until I got life. There's some cold res, and I crafted some extra attack speed. Nothing crazy. You can even get damage over time multiplier with attack skills. That would be ideal if you get something like this, but you'd want better life, of course. And I settled for life on mine over the extra damage, a little bit of extra attack speed, and attack speed definitely helps the toxic rain, though it is not a necessity to get on your bow. My flasks are a quicksilver flask with chance to avoid being stunned. I have a jade flask for the extra evasion with reduced effective curses. I have a granite flask with increased armor. This is my really best source of armor, is in this flask. The way I prevent myself from dying to physical damage, along with endurance charges from the enduring cry. Then I have a sulfur flask for just some extra damage, and it will reduce the effective shock on me during effect, making me not take as much increased damage. Then I have a eternal life flask that removes bleed and corrupting blood. Pantheon, I'm using Soul of the Brine King, so I can't get chain stunned. I can avoid freezes, reduced effective chill, and I'm getting life flasks if I haven't used life flask recently. And enemies I've hit recently have reduced life regeneration rate, which is very helpful. So jumping into the Ascendancy and passive tree. I'm playing on a Raider. Raider is amazing because you get this phasing and chance to suppress spell damage, 40 spell suppression, and I can just run through everything. Now, it's really important with this build because from when I fire to when the damage gets out is really low. So a lot of times I'm launching it and running, and the enemies will mostly die behind me, so being able to run through them is very important. Raider also gets Onslaught just permanently, and then increased effective Onslaught, and more chance to evade attacks during Onslaught. So this is how we get such high chance to evade attacks, because we're getting this 10% more chance to evade on our permanent onslaught. So crazy evasion levels on this character. And then you could go for Avatar of the Vaal, but we're not doing any fire, cold, or lightning damage. The exposures aren't going to help us as much. And we could get the Ailment of Void, but it's okay because Way of the Poacher will give us frenzy charges. And I can just generate frenzy charges while mapping or running around with this build, which is extra speed and damage. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it's very, very fast. You get your frenzy charges here. Very easy to cap up spell suppression with Quartz Infusion. Permanent phasing is like the best thing about the Raider. And then the permanent onslaught, extra evade, makes you very strong and very fast with Queen of the Forest. So moving through my passive tree, I bypassed all of the projectile damage here early on. I definitely use this projectile damage, but you can save points later on going around it. And then I come down for ballistics. I get Primal Spirit for the strength and intelligence, as well as Heart of Oak for life, and I get 2% life regen if I've used my life flask recently, and I'm getting a bunch of chance to avoid stuns here, stacking with what I get on my Quicksilver flask. Finesse has dex and attack speed. Accuracy is not something you need to worry about on this build. I don't actually have to hit anything to get my damage off. Then I'm going through all of this movement speed and spell suppression, getting intuition, which is spell suppression, then more life and flask recovery rates, so my big eternal life flask will recover even faster, and then the mastery for 50 flat life. So I'm getting lots of the spell suppression I was missing from these nodes in quickstep and intuition. Pushing up, get charisma, increased effect of auras on you for the malevolence and the grace. The clarity does its part as well. Pushing to the right, I grab Revenge of the Hunted, spell suppression while I'm full life, extra evasion rating to scale the evasion for the Queen of the Forest. And I should always be on full life because I shouldn't be getting hit by nearly anything. Continuing on, Hunter's Gambit gives you increased skill effect duration, damage over time with bow skills, and chaos damage over time multiplier, getting some increased damage over time with bow skills along the way, increased area of effect from the mastery, and strength from prowess here as well. Going up into the shadow area, I grab Wasting for chaos damage over time multiplier. A little bit of chaos resistance here is nice, but then onward up to coordination for attack speed, dex int, strength from blood siphon, down through entropy. Increased skill effect duration is really good for toxic rain. Not as useful on the caustic arrow, but it will cause the puddles of ground to last longer. Getting the increased damage over time here to get to Fangs of the Viper for its chaos damage and resourcefulness for the life and chance to suppress spell damage. Then continue through Blood Drinker for more life recovery on kill. Go up for the Jewel Socket, which I'm getting Chaos Dot Multi and Evasion rating from. Another Frenzy Charge since we're generating those. Mind Drinker is really useful for mapping, and also in here to get the mana reservation efficiency of skills. So when I am spamming stuff down, I can drain my mana. Mind Drinker, when clearing maps, I get mana on kill, and this solves any mana issues. And against single target, I wouldn't need to be spamming like this. Continuing up to Atrophy for increased chaos damage, Chaos Dot Multi along the way, more skill effect duration here. Down into Written in Blood for more strength, more life. Energy Shield here as well, though I'm not really stacking much of it. Then Path Through down to Growth and Decay for the Dot Multi and life regen there. This was the last thing I put in this build. As I got to 100, I pulled this all out of life. So I could lose some damage for not having these 6 points, but all 6 of those points could go into life, 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 life. There's another life out here. There is more life in here with the evasion rating. But once you get to 100, you don't need to worry about survivability as much anymore. And this is where you get the last bit of good damage. But returning back to the Raider start, going left, another Jewel Socket here has damage over time and chaos damage over time multiplier. Nothing crazy. I don't think I have a Watcher's Eye for this build. Pushing to the left for reflexes, these nodes also give spell suppression and evasion rating. Grab Profane Chemistry. These nodes give extra life recovery from flasks. Now this one's not the same as Herbalism. Herbalism is increased flask recovery rate. This means the amount there will fill faster. Profane Chemistry nodes give increased life recovery from flasks. This increases the life number that I recover from the flask. Then I'm grabbing all of the increased skill effect duration here with the more skill effect duration. The main benefit from this is the Toxic Rain totems. Having extra duration is also very nice for the Vaal Caustic Ground. Its duration of 9.79 seconds makes it very effective. Then I push over to the left to get the Scion Life Wheel, notable of Constitution. Pushing down from Profane Chemistry, there's another jewel here that has damage over time, chaos damage, projectile damage. All of those things boost the caustic arrow damage. There is damage with bows here with evasion rating on the nodes. Avatar of the Hunt also gives flat evasion rating and extra movement speed. And I'm getting Blink Arrow and Mirror Arrow cooldown recovery rate with this as well, just so I have an extra movement ability up faster. And this is kind of the area of the build that might really change a bit if you're focused more around the Toxic Rain totems. I push in here because it's a lot of good projectile damage out of the Caustic Arrow. Pretty much all bow damage here. And in Fury Bolts with the strength, and Art of the Gladiator gives more movement speed, attack speed here, bravery is life, and evasion rating here as well. So for Toxic Rain totems, you can push down to Watchtowers and get an additional totem, where I currently have 5 of them. And even though I'm casting 2 at a time, when I cast the last 2, one from the first 2 I cast goes away. So it's a little inefficient. Having 6 of them is definitely strong. So you would have to push down to at least Watchtowers to get that. Or even push down here for Panopticon. There's another way to get a 7th totem if you want. So you can really build around the totems more. I just really built for evasion, damage over time with bows, chaos stop multi, life evasion, a little bit of spell suppression, but I got it on pathing. I didn't have to go into any spell suppression nodes to get anything, so it's all really efficient. And like I said, these nodes up here were the last cuts. If you're trying to level something like this. Like by the time you get to level 100, you could have a ton of extra life, almost up to 6k there that I pulled out of that damage that I ended up taking. I'm just going to leave the life socketed in there in the POB. And let's give it one last showcase here. Go for a Phoenix that's got crit chance, multi, and extra monster life. Sure. And with this build, like, I'm here to kill the boss. Like, I don't necessarily on this build, it's not for stopping and doing all the mechanics. It's for run through the map about as quickly as possible, kill everything in your path. Like, there might be a better build to sit and mess with a blight or do an expedition or any of this other stuff. Your ultimatums, although this was the build that I played to League Start Ultimatum League, I leveled that build to 100 as well. Ultimatum enemies are very hard to kill, and this build was very successful at being able to run through them, always be damaging them in the ultimatum, and kiting them around because they were so tanky. So I had the speed to move around, I was always dealing damage, I could run right through them. The only thing you really need is hinder avoidance. That's the thing that kind of really slows a lot of builds in there, because I think they get increased effective hinder that stacks quite a bit. So having a really fast build like this and keep you in front of all of those enemies, especially if you can inflict hinder yourself. Toxic Rain slows enemies as well, so the totems are nice there just to get extra damage. But then here's the boss. Of course we get Fighting Bull in the middle of it. You know what, we'll do it. Get out the Vaal Caustic Arrow, Withering Step, curse them both. Let's see, who dies first? I'll put more totems down. Do another Withering Step. Okay. Phoenix has extra life. Probably time for another Vaal Caustic Arrow. Oh, he's not to half yet. I could probably get myself a third one. Yep, I just got it. So we'll put down another one of those. Hopefully he stays in it. I don't know if he's in it right now. He put down totems. Do another Vaal Caustic Arrow right in the center of him here. Yeah, so he definitely stood in that one for a little bit. But like I mentioned, being able to fire it in 6 directions means there's more chance he's going to be actually taking damage from that Vaal Caustic Arrow ground. It kind of blends in with all the extra green stuff I'm doing, but I might be able to get one more off here right at the end. Maybe even 2. Yep, okay. Throw down 1. Gotta go in all the different directions. Hey, got him. Extra life. And like I mentioned, this isn't the best boss killer. If you want a better boss killer, you build more around Toxic Rain than the Caustic Arrow. Caustic Arrow is really good at clearing. And then here one last time, the Vaal Caustic Arrow. Now you can see all of the damage areas it's actually putting down there in all 6 directions. Still just, it lasts quite a while. But it can definitely get covered up with all of the other caustic round effects and toxic rains and all of that. But that is going to do it for this video. Now I get to go double corrupt everything that I can in solo self-found. So be on the lookout later today for that video. But I would like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button as it really helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss more videos from me. If you'd like to help support my channel, please consider using the super thanks, the heart icon just below the video, or by joining to become a member. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.